Welcome to Emron's podcast, episode number 127. This is your host, Suman Silwal. If you're still looking for a fall marathon, visit emrons.com to get 15% discount for 7 bridges marathon, half marathon, and 5K. See you at Chattanooga. Enjoy the podcast. I would like to welcome Greg McMullin and Matt Smith to Emron's podcast. How are you doing, guys?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, doing really good. Thank you.
Welcome to Emron's podcast. I've been trying to... I talked to Matt a very long time ago, and we're trying to arrange a podcast, and it's been took so long to get this put you through. And, and Greg, I saw you in the last August race, and then since then I'm trying to find you, and then finally I got your information, and then we're here. So how's the running going for you guys?
Everything's going really good for me. I got my acceptance letter yesterday from Boston, and that's what I'm training for at the moment. Just it was a long battle to get here, and glad to be here, glad to be accepted. I'm excited about it, and got 6 months of some hard work in front of me.
Yeah, I think Greg's got the much harder task. I would say that my running's going well. In the process of going through trying out a couple of different blades at the moment, and I'll be traveling to Nashville actually tomorrow to get up with this with the Amputee Blade Runner group, and we're going to be hopefully working on some new setups for me to maybe make my running a little bit easier, get some new equipment. But as far as everything else goes, running's been going well for me, just one day at a time, man, trying to get better every day.
Definitely. Greg, I was going to mention that. I was going to ask you whether you get accepted to Boston. I don't know, the Boston process is so different for everybody. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it was a journey to get here. It is a hard process to go through. It's a little bit different qualifying as an amputee. We have, of course, a little bit different qualifying times and different standards, but I'm just so thankful to be in it. I never thought I would be here again, ever, after losing my leg.
Definitely. We'll get to that. That's the main part of our interview, this podcast, try to learn about both of you, or your journey to being a runner. So talk about that, Matt. You being the young runner. I think when I met you, you told me that you just started running. Tell us your running journey. How did you end up being a runner from the time you lost your legs to becoming a runner when I saw you?
Okay, I'll rewind all the way back to high school. I went to a small private high school, and you could play all the sports as long as you could, pretty much walk. But I excelled the most at cross country, track, and soccer. Naturally, just was really good at running. In high school, my 5K times were low 16s. The fastest mile I ran was 11th grade. I ran a 4-minute, 24-second mile. I was running really well. In fact, I actually ran so much right before college, I just got burned out. I kept getting stress fractures in my legs, and I had everybody telling me I needed to run in college. And being the young buck that I was, I decided I wasn't going to listen to anybody, and I wasn't going to do it. And of course, now I regret it because I never ran. So then, fast forward, I joined the Columbus Police Department in 2003. I worked there in 2008. I got hit by a drunk driver head on in my patrol car. I ended up with a 6 screws and a titanium plate in my right ankle. So up until that point, I was still pretty much running. I wasn't doing a whole lot of necessarily races, but I still kept in shape and kept running. And I could still, at any given time before then, if I wanted to just go out and run 10 miles, I'd go out and run 10 miles. It was always really easy for me. After that accident, I rehabbed for an entire year before I was able to get back to full duty. Running became a lot harder because I had a lot of swelling and scar tissue in the ankle, plus all that hardware. And I realized that I'd probably taken running, I had taken my ability to run for granted. So I'm going to fast forward again. I was able to rehab it about as good as I could get. After that accident, I never really got past about 5 miles. 4.5, give or take, before my ankle would swell up so big that I just couldn't run. I ended up moving to Birmingham. I got a job with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. The most that I was running up before my other accident, was when I was on their SWAT team And I was able to run right about 5 miles, like 40 minutes or 5 miles, whichever came first, is when my ankle would swell up real bad. But I could do it really fast. I was running really good. Fast forward to 2017, was on my motorcycle, just driving down 280. 19-year-old on her cell phone pulled out in front of me when I was about 80 feet from the intersection. My left, I almost avoided the car. It was really close. I went as hard as I could to the right. The front of my bike missed the rear bumper. My left leg right above the ankle struck the bumper and basically took my leg completely off. It was just hanging on by a couple threads there. And so then thus begun, another long rehab. It took me one less week to come back to full duty from losing my left leg below the knee on my left leg than it did when I had all that the titanium plate and 6 screws in my right ankle. So I say all that to say this. Lots of people heard about my accident. They called my wife and they're like, "Oh my gosh, is he okay?" She's like, "Yeah." Please tell me it was his right leg, because my right leg was the one that got messed up in that drunk driving accident. And of course it wasn't. It was my good leg. So I was determined in the hospital that I was determined that I was going to run again. And it didn't really matter that I had problems with my right leg. It didn't matter that I now had a prosthetic on my left leg. I was going to run. And it just began when I started running those races that I saw you at this summer. I had finally gotten the running blade that was given to me set up to where I could run. And I had only run on it 3 times before that race. So it was pretty liberating to finally run again and be able to finish, a 5K, and with relatively no pain in my right leg. Funny thing that happens when you don't have any option but to use your opposite leg for everything. It doesn't swell up like it used to. It still gives me a little bit of pain, but yeah. Anyway, so that so my goal now is to work towards a 10K. And then after I get that, I'm going to work towards a half. And then after that, I'm going to work towards a full marathon. So one thing at a time. I have to kind of go a little bit slower with my right ankle because it'll give me fits sometimes. And I will say this. I appreciate you letting me go first, because Greg's accident was way worse than mine. Not only that, Greg was a much better runner than me. So I appreciate you letting me go first. I wouldn't want to have to go after Greg.
You've been our youngest runner to our community. Greg already qualified for Boston, so his story going to go long. So definitely.
Yeah, no. So that's about where I'm at. I am. So the good thing is that Greg got me in touch with the guys at the Amputee Blade Runners, and after filling out the forms and getting accepted, I'm going to be heading up there tomorrow and hopefully starting a nice new journey towards better equipment and probably better runs, to be honest. So it's exciting, man. I'm going to have trouble sleeping tonight that I'm so excited about driving to Nashville tomorrow. Wow. Things are looking up.
Yeah, better days ahead of you.
Absolutely.
Matt's in for a life-changing experience tomorrow when he goes to Amputee Blade Runners. They are just an unbelievable organization. I can't say enough about them. I would no way be running today if it were not for Aaron Fitzsimmons, who started Amputee Blade Runners. They provide running blades free of charge to people like me and to people like Matt, and to tons of just little kids that just want to run around the playground. They just want to be normal kids. And insurance will not pay for a running blade.
Nobody's insurance will.
Oh, really?
Nothing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And Amputee Blade Runners provides them through their charity free of charge.
Wow.
I think Greg can tell you this. If you wanted, even though I have a much older blade than what Greg has. If you wanted to get the setup that I have right now, you'd still have to shell out probably $25,000.
Wow.
And because insurance isn't going to cover it at all.
No.
So the Amputee Blade Runners and Aaron Fitzsimmons and those guys, they're lifesavers for people like me and Greg that want a second chance, basically. I mean, and kids, they do an invaluable service to the amputee community. It's impressive.
And let me say, Phil Auer, who makes the prosthetic blades. Yep. And my walking foot, they have provided just an enormous amount of resources. They have sent me many, many blades to just test and get feedback on. And I've just had so many opportunities through their charitable gifts toward me. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be running like this either.
Definitely. Greg, one of the thing I know I have seen your stories in, like I said, last couple of weeks ago was the first time when we talked. Do we have more of Blade Runners here in the Birmingham area? Because you two are the only one in the distance races that I know. But do we have a big community here around Birmingham area, or are we limited on that?
I think we're pretty limited. I don't see very many other runners out there. I don't know if I've met anybody other than Matt that's really serious about running.
Yep.
I would like to, see some more 5Ks and some more events where some amputees are running. I would like personally to see how I stack up myself against other amputee runners. I really just don't see a lot of them out there.
Greg was the first one that I had met. I mean, I was so surprised when I got to the race there late and someone said, "Hey, there's another guy with a blade here." And I was like, "What? This is great." Because I never, and it really just goes to show the overwhelming, 90% of amputees are typically from diabetic or their medical things, and most of those people end up being mostly sedentary and they're not running. So the portion of the community that are amputees that actually run it's very, 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 very small. So typically we're spread out everywhere. I was really thankful that Greg is in this area because I had never met anybody. I didn't know that the equipment I had was probably not very good. Now, Dad, does it work? Sure, it works, and you can make anything work. Would it be better, and would it allow my leg to work a lot better and sweat less and have more flexibility? Yeah, there's a lot more options out there. I had no idea until I met Greg. I had no idea that there was a whole bunch of other stuff out there. So, yeah, I'm sure that there could be other amputees, and they're probably like me or Greg, where they've never met anybody else.
Definitely. Hopefully this podcast will help to put that word out there in the community saying, hey, so that's a great thing. I didn't know. Greg, let's tell us your story. Like Matt said, and you mentioned about your story a little bit earlier, pre-interview, but I have never heard your story. So
I was a lot like Matt ran in high school, cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, year round. Just fell in love with it, especially the distance running, and probably, kept it up a few years after high school. I think I'm probably like a lot of people when they get in their, later 20s, 30s, or 40s and have a family and children, you kind of get out of it maybe. And then maybe you get back into running a little later after you get your family gets a little bit older. In my 40s, I got back into it pretty heavy, and I was training myself and running races and running pretty steady until October of 13. I was plowing a field with a big farm tractor, and I plowed up a yellow jacket's nest, and they just swarmed me. It seemed like hundreds of them were in my face and in my hair, down my shirt, stinging me, and I couldn't get away from them. They were just following the tractor. And I meant to knock the tractor in neutral, and I didn't hit the shifter hard enough when I jumped off of it, and the tractor was just running wide open down the field. And I wished I would have let it go. But I ran up beside it, went to try to knock it in neutral, and that big back wheel just grabbed me and drove my femur bone through my pelvis, snapped my hip joint completely off. When it all came to a rest, the tractor was dead up against a tree, running wide open. It couldn't go anywhere. The tires were just spinning in the dirt, but I was trapped underneath of it. The disc that I had on the back of it had my legs pinned down, and it, I don't know, probably weighs 600-700 pounds. So I was trapped in between the disc and the tractor, and on this particular tractor, the exhaust did not go straight up in the air. It came down under the rear axle, and it was probably 2 feet away from me, just blowing wide open diesel exhaust on the back of my leg and on my side, on my left side. And it burned me so severely that my leg wouldn't work anymore. It burned through the nerves, burned me pretty much to the bone. I spent 2 months in the UAB burn center and another 4 to 5 months in a hospital bed at home before I could ever even get a hip replacement. I ended up getting 2 total hip replacements on the left side, had I think 7 deburrment surgeries to remove all the burned and damaged tissue and muscle from my left side. My left hamstring and my left glute was pretty much removed. So I did not lose my leg at that point. I had my leg for about 3 3.5 years after the accident, but it didn't work. And no calf muscle, no ankle, no toes, no foot, no nothing worked. And I knew I could never, ever be a runner again, ever. I tried. I couldn't run 10 steps. When you got no push off, you're just not going to run. And I kept running into people that were just walking so much better than me. And so I decided one day to see a surgeon, possibility of having it amputated. And it didn't take me about a week to make up my mind. I thought, if it doesn't work, there's no point in keeping it. So I had it amputated. And then I did the thing that they tell you not to do. I fell 4 times on my stump, busted it open, busted the stitches open. So it took me about 8 months to get a prosthetic. I was working one day on the side of the road on crutches, and this guy rides by on a bicycle. His name was Jim Griffin, and I didn't pay him a whole lot of attention. And a few minutes later, he turned around, he rode back up in the driveway, and he got off his bicycle, and he was amputated. He was an amputee, just like me. Same side, same amputation, same spot. And I just was staring at his prosthetic. I couldn't believe how well his prosthetic was moving, how well he was getting around. And I told him my story, told him I used to be a runner. I was trying to get back into that. And he listened to me, and he finally said, "You are never, ever, ever going to find what you're looking for in Birmingham. They just don't exist." He said, "Trust me, I have been to everybody." So he set me up with Aaron at Amputee Blade Runners. And when I called the next day, Aaron talked to me for probably 20 minutes, got me up there, got me in a good walking leg, told me, "When you come back next time, I'm going to have you a running blade." And he was true to his word. When I went back the next time, he had a running blade for me. I decided at that point, after laying in a bed for 6 months, and I was 205, 210 pounds, that I needed some help. So I approached Alex at Resolute Running, sent him an email, asked him if he'd take me on and train me. I told him, my condition, and I told him if he'd take me on, I'd work hard and I'd do my part. So he put me in touch with Ann Stalvey, who is my current trainer, and Ann and I started working together. I met with Ann for about 2 months without a prosthetic. I would go in there on crutches and just get on the floor, and we'd just do core work, just work on abs, hips, and just pure core strengthening. She told me up front if I did not have a core like a piece of steel, that I was going to be injured constantly. I'd never be a runner again. So we just worked on the floor for about 2 months while Aaron got me set up for a blade, got my running blade. And the first time I ever went back over to Resolute, I ran across the floor at the gym, which was only about 20 yards, maybe even less than that. And Ann said, "Oh, yeah, we are definitely going to run a 5K. So that was in, I think, maybe December year before last, and ran the first 5K at the Rump Shaker in March of 18. That was my first 5K. Proceeded on to the Vulcan 10K, and then a half marathon in Florence later that year, and just ran my first marathon. Went to Minnesota and ran the Grandma's Marathon. That was the Boston qualifier. And like I said, I got my acceptance letter yesterday from Boston.
Amazing. Just amazing.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a million questions to ask. Let's start this conversation about running and all these things that you have to go through. And both of you can tell me how it is. Because as a runner, we go through our own set of pain, correct? But now you guys have to deal with not having legs or having prosthetic legs. So tell us about how difficult it is for you to, get out and run. Matt, I think you're still trying to get a proper equipment.
Well, I've got good equipment. It's just, it works. There's just a lot better out there. Imagine you having a 2002 Honda Accord. Sure, it works, and it probably drives good every day. Does it drive as good as a 2020 Tahoe? No, probably not. And it won't have as many bells and whistles, and it's not going to be smooth. There's just a lot better stuff out there. So I'm sure, like Greg, it's tough in the beginning. Typically, for me, when I first started running, until your leg gets used to the pounding, it hurts. I mean, it does. And even now, when I run the first half mile or so, it always hurts, and I'm like, golly, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And then all of a sudden, it just stops, and it just sort of clicks, and everything goes. And it's I'm sure, and Greg, again, he's further along than me. And I think Greg, to his credit, was probably a much, much, much better runner than me before his accident. He had probably trained a lot more for it. I was just sort of running just for kicks and to stay in shape. But, I mean, I would imagine he has the same thing. It's just sometimes it can be tough waking up in the morning, things are stiff. And, man, if your leg's a little bit swollen, sometimes it doesn't fit in your prosthetic right. And I mean, there can be all kind of little issues. If you don't take care of it, you can end up with blisters. If you get a blister, you can't do anything. If you get a blister on the end of your leg, you can't do anything until it heals. I mean, you're just going to have to stop doing stuff. You might even not be able to walk for a little bit. So I've dealt with a couple of ingrown hairs last year that sidelined me for a good one time. I couldn't wear my leg for an entire week because it was so bad. So obviously, you got to be real careful. You got to really take care of your leg and clean it. And clean all of your liners and your equipment. So I mean, it does take a little bit of upkeep, and it keeps you honest. Honestly, it's going to keep you honest and make sure. I don't know about Greg, but I know for me, if I don't run at least every other day or every 2 days, my leg hurts. It hurts a lot more whenever I try and do it. So it keeps me honest. Like it's gonna make sure that I keep running, because you want your leg to kind of stay used to that feeling, because it's a much different feeling running than it is to just walking around doing everyday stuff.
So on this note, for a runner, we just, we get up and just wear socks and shoes and just go out and run. For you and Greg, if you had to get prepared, how does the typical run for preparation for a run? Do you use the same prosthetic legs for running and normal day, or is it different things you do? I don't know how this works.
Well, I have two totally separate legs. One that I wear all day long for walking and in my job, and then I have a blade, which is I don't wear a shoe with, same as Matt. You just have a rubber sole on the bottom of your blade, which makes contact with the ground. The hardest thing for me to ever get used to is it's very hard to get used to the blade. It takes me a very long time. In the last 18 months, Aaron has probably made me a dozen legs. And I tell him every time, I say, Aaron, I can't go out here and run around the block a couple times and tell you if it's good or not. I have to go home and run, many miles over the course of a couple weeks. I have to put in, 8, 10, 12, 14-mile runs over the course of several weeks before I know that it's right. And he's got me in one now that's just, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely perfect. I'm just doing great in it. But it takes a long time to adjust to it. One of the worst things is the sweat is unbelievable. When you I'm putting an 1/8 of an inch thick gel liner on my leg, and you just blocked every one of those sweat glands. I'm telling you, when I take my leg off, I can pour it out with a bucket.
Wow.
And I mean, and then, when it gets so wet in there, you get friction issues. And I wear a sock underneath those. So I put a sweat sock on my stump first, and then I put the gel liner on, and then I put my leg on. Of course, I've tried, all kinds of antiperspirants, and I actually have an appointment with a doctor next week who thinks that she can get Botox approved by insurance, which, Botox paralyzes your sweat glands. So that's going to be a huge bonus for me if she's able to do that. And Matt's right. I mean, some days you just get up and just don't feel like it. After I ran the Grandma's Marathon in June, I went through this 2-month-long just funk. I mean, I just did not want to run. I did not have motivation. I just didn't want to do it. If I had not had a trainer and I wasn't on Strava and I knew people were following me and watching me, I may have quit. I don't know. I just did not feel like it. Ann kept telling me that was normal after a marathon, and the heat was so bad, the humidity was so bad, just that, she reduced my weekly mileage, but I kept running, my 4 days a week at a reduced mileage, a little bit reduced pace. And one morning I think I had an 8-mile run on my schedule, and the run just went really well, and something just clicked, like you just, I don't know, flipped the light switch, and I was all fine again.
Yeah, it sounds like a normal running day for me. I go through those ups and downs and peaks and valleys. If I look at my training, some days I can go 60 miles, no problem, in a week, and then some day 30 miles, it's a struggle. So
here's another thing that's different, and it's different from amputee to amputee. Greg's leg probably sweats more than mine. Why? I don't know. It just does. Some people sweat more than others. my leg initially sweat really bad. And I have a big, huge, long sleeve, hopefully that we're going to be getting rid of. We're talking 90% of what's left of my leg, so middle of my calf all the way up to almost my groins. I have a long sleeve that covers everything. Now, I was fortunate. Initially, my legs sweat horribly in the beginning, and for some reason, it just kind of – the only time I start feeling a big accumulation of sweat is once I get around the 4-mile mark. So that's where it would start becoming an issue for, like, with me. So, it's I'm anxious to kind of I'm excited that maybe Greg can see about if we can get Botox approved, because if we can get it approved for his, I'm sure I can work around getting it approved for mine. But yeah, sweat's an issue. I haven't had the same motivation issues yet. The only time that it becomes tough is if you hurt yourself. I fell 2 months ago, right after the second run, the second Here to Beer run that I saw you at. I fell on my leg, just about ready to go to bed. I slipped off my little knee scooter and I fell directly on the end. Now, how I didn't bust it open, I have no idea. How I didn't break it, I still have no idea. I thought for sure I had broken it. And that was tough because I couldn't run for, I think, almost 2 weeks. And then, of course, as soon as you go to run that first time, man, it's just pain all over again. It can be a daily struggle, but I think for the most part, just like Greg said, even if you don't feel like it, man, get out there and do it. And you'll eventually, it'll just click. And man, when it clicks and it feels good, there's not much like it. It's hard to explain to people who don't run.
Matt touched on it. When you're a new runner, a new amputee runner, your good leg takes a beating, bad beating. When I first started off, I thought, well, I'm going to start at 45 seconds of running and 15 seconds of walking. I'm going to do the walk-run program. And that was way, way too much. I did that 45 seconds of running, 15 walking. I did it for, I think, 15 minutes. The next day, my good leg hurt so bad, I could not hardly walk. I had to take 30 days off before I could even ever try to run again. And where I ended up starting at was 10 seconds of running and 50 seconds of walking.
Wow.
I had to start at that slow to get built up to where I am now. I just never realized that my good leg was going to take that big a beating and be demanded that much work of.
Yep. The other thing for new amputees, let's say that you've been walking around in your regular prosthetic and your walking leg, you're in it 90% of the time. Like for me, the only time I take it off is if I'm in the shower or I'm sleeping. So I have it on all day long, all day, every day. Well, when you go to run, there's a good chance, because most people, what regular folks don't realize is that the prosthetics that most of us use, even though they're different, they do a lot of the work for us, right? Mm-hmm. So especially with some of these running blades, they do a lot of the work that your calf and your knee and all parts of your hip and your lower back. So when you start running, those muscles are weakened. And like for me, so my good leg, for whatever reason, I didn't have as much problems with my good leg as I did. But my lower back gave me so many problems when I first started running. I mean, that's what held me up. I had been working out and going to the gym, but for me, I wasn't able to run right away because I had trouble getting my running blade set up, and a lot of that was I wasn't going to a place like Amputee Blade Runners, which I'm obviously really excited to go to. But so Greg touched on that earlier, man. Working out, making sure that you have a strong core. For amputees, having a strong core is one of the best things that you can do. One, it helps you with balance. Two, it's going to help you, especially if you want to run as an amputee, because you have less to work with, a lot less. And the blades do help us, but they do a lot of the work for us. And so you have to make sure that the rest of yourself is taken care of.
So talking about that, good legs and amputee legs, tell us about how do you balance? We talk about strides versus going in those strides. Do you have to balance those? I mean, this whole idea is so new to me, and I've seen amputee runners. Sometimes they're pretty fast, and but talking about matching your strides, balancing yourself, things like that. How difficult is that for you?
I don't know if this holds true with Matt, but I watch my statistics on Garmin very closely, and my stride length is very short compared to most people. So I have to make it back up with cadence. I mean, you're only going to get your pace from two ways, your stride length and your cadence. So when I see a lot of people are running at a 160 something cadence, 75 maybe tops. I try to keep mine at least 180. When I'm racing, it's usually over 190 or closer to 200.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I just can't get, because I've had 2 hip replacements and I've lost a lot of range of motion in that hip. I just can't get the stride length that other people can get. So you got to make it back up somewhere. So it's got to come from someplace.
No, that makes sense. I would say, and if you watched me and Greg, obviously Greg's injuries were way worse than mine. He lost a lot of muscle. His hip Greg, isn't one of your hips higher than your other one?
Yes, it's about an inch higher on the left side.
Greg's stride and his cadence and his running gait looks entirely different than mine. I think Greg, I don't know if you probably didn't even really get to see me run because you were so much faster than me. Most people, when they watch me run, my gait looks about the normal as a normal. It looks about the same as a normal runner. I think it's a little bit shorter than it used to be, but for the most part, I would say my cadence when I run, like when I ran when I ran a faster time, as opposed to even when I run slower, it's around 170 to 175, my cadence is. So,
Matt, I do remember when you come in through last 3 times, I think, look, for me, you look normal, normal runner. You look pretty fast and normal to me. I haven't seen Greg running as much as I have seen you in the races.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've got a little jerk in my stride, I guess you'd call it.
Well, I had a conversation with Greg, and I told him I didn't even understand how he was doing it, because to me it looked so. Of course, I didn't know the extent of Greg's injuries, but I was like, man, I don't even know how you're doing that, because I saw him running, and to me it looked like he shouldn't even be able to run as fast as he was. And Greg is fast. He was flying. So.
I appreciate it, Matt. A lot of that has to do with getting the right equipment, and you're heading to the right place tomorrow.
I can't wait.
This will be a great story as we move forward. As you get better equipment, Matt, hopefully this will take your running journey further than whatever you have been able to achieve so far. So.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Yeah, I don't think there is anybody in Alabama or Birmingham, or I don't know, maybe even Alabama, who, from a prosthesist standpoint, works with runners. And that's what they do in Nashville. I mean, they are always constantly trying to come up with something better for runners. It's an ongoing, continuous process. They send me blades to test all the time just to give them feedback on. I had email conversations all day long today with Aaron at Amputee Blade Runners and with the engineering department at Phil Hour. We were discussing different blades and different feedbacks and different results on different blades. And it's just it's an ongoing development process constantly with those people. They do not quit.
That's a great support that you have there, Greg.
It's incredible.
Tell us about these blades, this concept of blades. Like I said, I have seen people wearing it. What are they made out of?
It's carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber, okay. It's like a bicycle, so some of the bicycles are made with different fibers and stuff. It's a pretty lightweight, or?
It's extremely light. I think mine weighs, I think it's around 2.5 pounds. So I don't know if you've ever done this, Matt, but you can actually look up and see how much weight you lost when you lost your leg. Have you ever done that?
No, I've not done that.
It's about 3.5% of your body weight. So for me, it's about 6 pounds. So I lost 6 pounds, and I put about 2.5 on with the blade. So I'm about 3.5, 4 pounds lighter than I normally would be. But yeah, you can look up those charts and see how much weight you lost with a lower leg amputation.
Okay.
On this blade, let's talk about one because pretty interesting for me to kind of understand. Do you have to replace this? What's the longevity on this blades, and how wear and tear? You mentioned that a little bit, Greg, earlier.
I've never had one long enough to know. They keep sending me new ones to try out. I mean, I put the last blade that I just had, I put 800 miles on. That was the longest I've had a blade. And now it started over 2 weeks ago with something else. But I've had so many of them. I've never worn anything out. I don't know what it would take. They're very, very durable, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking is how often you have to replace them, and for normal normal people, if you have to do it. So
there's a tread that they glue on the bottom of them that replaces the sole of your shoe. It's actually made by Michelin, and I had 800 miles on my last one. I think it was maybe about half wore out with 800 miles on it. And that's really your only wear and tear. I don't know that the carbon fiber would ever give out. I don't know what it would take to give out. It's extremely durable.
Obviously, I've never run on one long enough. The old blade that I'm using now, I met somebody that's a runner out of North Carolina, and she put 4,000 miles on her blade. And she got a new one. She actually went to ABR to get a new one, and it's a new fill hour, just like Greg's using. But she put 4,000 miles on that one, and she never replaced it. Now I know that they will eventually wear out, but I know it just depends. Some blades last longer than others. I don't know. It just depends.
Did she have a posterior mount or distal mount, Matt?
Initially, it was a distal mount, just like mine is now, and then she went to a posterior mount.
Yeah. So for those who might not know, distal mount is the blade's going to come straight off the very end of your stump. Posterior mount's going to be mounted to the backside where your calf muscle would be. I prefer posterior mount myself. Typically, posterior mounts are more for sprinters. It's up for much debate, really. There's a lot of testing going on in that area right now, but I just prefer. It feels like a more natural running gait to me to wear a posterior mount than it does a distal mount.
Whenever you wear and run races, and training is fine, but doing the races, what do you do, Greg? You have done a marathon by now, and you're ready to go to run the Boston. What do you do? If you have any problems and difficulties, have you ever had any issue? Even I guess you haven't done enough marathon, but have you had any issue in the middle of the run, or where you're so far out, but now you cannot do anything with it, or so those kind of struggle. We all have a struggles. But
are you talking specifically about the prosthetic, or just issues in general?
The prosthetic. And when you have problems with the prosthetic, what do you do? I mean,
in a race, I have not had a single problem with the prosthetic other than sweat. And fortunately, at the Grandma's Marathon, it was 55 degrees, so it really wasn't. I mean, it was soaking wet, but it wasn't like I was slipping out of the socket or anything. I had severe calf cramps in the last 5 miles. It was brutal. I didn't think I was going to make the last 5 miles. From a prosthetic standpoint, I didn't have any problems. You're going to rub some blisters, like Matt said. That just comes. You just got to put more miles in and just toughen it up, and eventually you won't have those.
If I can interrupt you guys real quick, I just got a call from work. I am going to have to go. I am on call as an investigator, so I apologize, my friends, but I am going to have to run.
Thanks for your time, Matt. Great to have you here, and we'll keep in touch. And then when I release, I'll let you know. Thanks for coming.
Take care, Matt.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So Matt had to leave, so we'll just continue our interview. We don't have much left anyway, but let's continue in this interview. So talking about your overall running as a runner yourself now. What are the difficult situation? We just talked about doing the races, being an amputee, but as an overall runner with having disability or not having legs, do you feel that you are disadvantaged, or now you have found a way to get back on it? Tell us how does it look from your end? For us, it's very motivational to see you out there, being out there. You have no excuse, and I think I saw your shirt saying "No legs, no excuse." But you're out there. Tell us about when you're in. What do you feel?
I don't feel disadvantaged, not one single bit. I'm actually faster now than I was before, if you can believe that. And some people will actually look at it like you're cheating, but I assure you, if it was that advantageous, I'd cut off my other one, right? So it's a struggle, but I don't look at it as a disadvantage. And I don't want to come across like I'm bragging, but I normally win my age group. I'm not here to say that I'm the best runner out here in Birmingham, because there are, I look at results from races, and there are definitely people that are in my age group, which is 50 to 54, 55, that can beat me and beat me well. It just depends on who shows up that day.
Definitely.
You're a runner. It just depends on who shows up. There's people in the 55 to 60 age group that can beat me handily. But normally, I can normally place, at least in my age group. So I don't feel at all disadvantaged.
That's great. Greg, whenever you race, or when you get ready for training, you had to put extra time and extra hours. So do you have to start? How does your normal, training run look like? Give us some idea. How do you train or racing look like for, like I say, I was telling earlier, for us it's just we put our shoes on and just ready to go.
I can tell you what a normal training week looks like. As I said, I'm a member of Resolute Running, and Ann is my trainer, and I train 4 days a week. I run Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Tuesday is at Resolute Running. Tuesday is always speed work for everybody. And Saturday is always your long run for everybody. It's the same for everybody. My week will look like anywhere from 30 miles a week up to maybe 42, 43, 44 miles a week when we're getting close to training for marathons. So right now I'm kind of down a little bit. I'm building back up from the last marathon. My long runs are 14, I think was last Saturday. This is a down week. We'll drop back down to just 10 miles on the long run this week, and then we'll start building again. The next 3 Saturdays will probably be a 14, a 16, and an 18, and we'll start building back up to that 20-mile mark. But as far as races and getting ready for 5Ks, yes, I get extremely nervous. I'm very competitive. To me, it's very serious. I go out there to race, and I go out there to race hard, and I want to win every time, and I want to have a PR every time. And it's not reasonable. I know it's not reasonable, but that's just what I want, and that's the way that I'll run. I want to have. Of course, I don't get a PR every time. Obviously, nobody does. But that's the great thing about running. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can always be competitive. You're competing every single time against yourself. You can always see if you can have a PR. Definitely. It doesn't matter if you're in your 50s or your 60s, or even if you're in your 60s and you're well past, your prime PR days. You can always say, well, can I have my best run of when I was in my 60s, or when I was 62? Can I have my PR? And it's always like that. You're always
achieving, right? Trying to achieve the next thing. Yeah, we have a friend, Jimmy Burns. I wanted to throw his name. He's 80, 81, 82. He's past 80. I mean, he's competitive. I mean, he just recently ran 6 days, 6 days race. I think he logged more than 250 miles. So he's always out there. Yeah.
Did he do the Endless Mile last year?
Yeah, he does Endless Mile too. Yeah. He's a pro on this small circuit races. So he goes around the world now. What is your future like for you? I know you're headed to Boston in April, but are you going to continue running a marathon, or you're going to stick to the lesser distance, or what's the future of running for you look like?
Well, Boston's always been my dream and my goal, and I always wanted to get there. I just wanted to experience it. After that happens, I really don't know. I don't know if I'll pursue it again. I don't know if I'll pursue any longer distances. My 5Ks are my favorite. I would really rather concentrate on 5K speed. I want to break the 20-minute mark as a amputee in my 50s and be below 20-minute 5K. So that's kind of my goal for the future. When we're done training for Boston, I've let Ann know that, and we're going to start really, really concentrating on a lot of strength work and a lot of speed work to try to get there.
A lot of time people will, whenever some of my friends, they try to settle from marathon, they go to half a marathon. So, half marathon, 5K to half marathon distance, it's a lot less training. And for distance-wise, you can still put a speed, but distance-wise, a lot less.
Right.
So, commitment is a lot less too. So time-wise. So one other question I was as an ultra runner, and I have to ask you this question. On your running community, I know you're not, but in your running community, the community that you're exposed to, do we have any amputee ultra runners, distance runner beyond marathon? Do you know anybody?
I do not know of anybody. I think Ann has a friend who is an ultra runner. I'm going to participate in the Ragnar Relay from Chattanooga to Nashville in November, which is almost a 200-mile relay race. And we've got some, good runners on that team. I don't know if any of them are ultras, and I don't know of any other ultra runners. And who knows, after Boston, I might change my mind and decide I want to be an ultra runner. You know how runners are. We change our mind all the time. We want to do something one day and tomorrow it's something else.
Tell me about that. Yeah.
We're flaky.
Yeah. But I was wondering, how does it look like in a trail running with a amputee leg, it's difficult as is.
I've never gotten off road. To be honest with you, I'm afraid of it. I've got such a limited range of motion in my hip. I don't really pick my left leg up high enough, and I'm afraid I'm going to trip over a root or a rock and get injured, and then I'll be off for months, and there goes my, all my training and everything for Boston. So I'm really afraid of it. I stay on the sidewalks and on the pavement, and I do not get off road. I wish I could. I probably really would enjoy it. I've got some friends that are doing, 50-mile trail races, and it looks like a lot of fun, but I just don't think I could manage it in my condition.
Yeah, definitely. I was wondering if it'll be great to find if we have anybody out there who's an ultra runner. So if you ever come across, do let me know. Greg, we talked so much different aspect of your running journey, Matt's running journey. Do you have any message out there in the community? Because you and Matt is one of the kind for us here in Birmingham area. We're great to have you.
Sure I do. I love to help other amputees. I very seldom ever even walk by another amputee without at least stopping to speak to them and ask them how they're doing, how their legs fitting. If you have any amputees that happen to hear this podcast and they're interested in some running experience or starting to get out and get some exercise and start running, I'd be more than happy to help them, put them in, set them on that pathway and get them started. I love helping people do that. It's a real life changer. Be able to get out and accomplish things like that.
How can they? Do you have a Facebook page or where people can get access to you?
I do not have a Facebook page.
Email address, maybe.
Yeah, email. I'm not very social media savvy.
That's okay.
They can certainly contact me through email or through Resolute Running. Amputee Blade Runners absolutely can help them or put them in touch with me. They can get in touch with me.
Definitely, yeah. So listener, if you know anybody, or if you want to, if you're an amputee and want to be a runner, do get in contact with Greg. Greg, you mentioned earlier about a 5K, that's going to support Amputee Blade Runner. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, on October 5th in Sulligent, Alabama, if there's a 5K to benefit Amputee Blade Runners. It's being put on by the family of Aiden Woods. Aiden is a little boy. He was 6 years old when he lost his leg just a few months ago in a four-wheeler accident, lost his leg above knee. His family's putting on this run to support Amputee Blade Runners. They're really trying to get as many amputees out there to come and run as they can. Matt and I are both going out there to run it. If there's anybody out there who's listening, you're an amputee, no matter what your ability, your speed, if you want to walk it or whatever, it'd be great to have you come out there and support Aiden. We just want to get out there and show this little boy what can be accomplished and that he can do anything that he wants to in his life. His life's not over. He can be whatever he wants to be.
Definitely. It sounds like a great charity, great race. Sounds like both of you going to be there. if you're our listeners, if you want to support the charity and support the cause as well, you should go and run with Matt and Greg and also show your support. And I'll put a link to the race and event.
If you want to look it up, it's actually called the Appendix Cancer 5K because that's what it's been called for years. But this year, Aiden's family is supporting Amputee Blade Runners with it.
It sounds like great charity. I'll put a link with this podcast also on the marathon runs. So
great.
Before we close this interview, I would like you to give us a word of advice to never to give up running with ability or disability that we all have in certain ways. Just continue running and achieve that bigger goal. Give us a words of advice.
Well, absolutely. You just said it. You can't ever give up. There's going to be days you experience them. I experienced them. I went through 2 months of it where I just didn't want to run. I would wake up in the morning and I would think, oh my gosh, today's a run day. I just do not want to do it. But you can't give up. And runners know if you get up and you do your run in the morning, even if you don't want to, you're going to have a better rest of the day. You're just going to feel better the rest of the day. So it's, you're normally going to feel that in the first 5 minutes of your run. You're just going to feel better and be glad you got out the door and do it. So my best advice I can give is just to not give up, to keep on getting out there and hitting it every day. If you don't have a trainer, that has helped me tremendously just to be accountable to somebody. Because there's a lot of days I probably would not have gotten up and done it, but I know somebody's watching to see if I did it. So it's been a huge, huge deal to me to have a trainer, somebody that showed me the importance of strength training, the importance of consistency, of doing speed work once a week, of doing that long run once a week, of taking a down week every 3 weeks. I didn't know these things when I was training myself, and that's been huge. It's been a very big part of it. The Resolute running has been very significant to me. Yes.
Yeah, they have been really huge positive. Help. Yeah, huge help to you. I can tell you're such appreciative of whatever Resolute Running has done to you and your running, and giving a hope. I think that's a great story. Resolute Running said, well, Ann and Alex and everybody there at the Resolute Running, the friends of
if you can't run across the room, they'll get you to a 5K and beyond that to wherever you want to go. It's up to you how far you want to go. They'll get you there.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for your time. It's a great pleasure to connect with you and listen to your stories. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed listening or got motivated and go out and run. No excuse running. So that's what I call it. So
that's right. No excuses.
Yeah, there's we can find millions of reasons for you. You had one less reason not to run. Now you found a million reasons to run. So, and you're still out there. So thanks for being such an inspiration out there and being in our community, and looking forward to hearing your Boston training, Boston Marathon, and so many things in the future of running for you, and so excited for that.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity of having me on.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of MRuns Podcast. Please visit mruns.com to listen to our previous podcast episodes, links to our social media channels, get race photos, get discount codes, and more.